The state of the NBA right now is one that is well and truly in flux in a rather fun way. The Eastern Conference has a rather stocked roster of teams, many of whom are hitting their stride right now, like the Miami Heat, Chicago Bulls, Boston Celtics, and more. The Western Conference has the Grizzlies surging, the Warriors slumping, the Suns injured, and the Lakers, well, let's move on. And then, there's the 76ers, who have just gotten a new key piece that might just change the whole dynamic of the playoffs. So, given that, allow us to show you how Joel Embiid says 76ers two-man game with James Harden is unstoppable. Unstoppable. The Philadelphia 76ers are looking dominant with the newly acquired James Harden alongside Joel Embiid, and the latter couldn't agree more. Speaking with reporters after Philadelphia's 125-109 win over the New York Knicks on Sunday, Embiid said the team's two-man game with Harden is unstoppable and making life difficult for opposing defenders. Joel Embiid on the two-man game with James Harden? Unstoppable. What are you really going to do? You got to make a decision. Do you stay on me or stay on him? And if you want to guard both of us with the other guys, now you got Matisse diving to the rim or wide open shooters. Sunday's contest marked just the second time Embiid and Harden have taken the floor together. Harden made his debut last Friday in a 133-102 win over the Minnesota Timberwolves. Against the Timberwolves, the duo combined for 61 points. They were even better against the Knicks, combining for 66 points. Embiid finished with 37 points, 9 rebounds, and 4 blocks, while Harden had 29 points, 10 rebounds, 16 assists, and 5 steals on Sunday. This is the second time Embiid has praised Harden over the last few days. Following the Sixers' win over the Timberwolves, the veteran big man said playing with Harden has helped him be the most wide open in his career thus far. Sixers head coach Doc Rivers also praised the All-Star point guard during Sunday's postgame press conference. Just his way of figuring it out. He did a little bit of everything. The biggest thing was the steals. He had his hands everywhere. But I thought offensively, because they're, the Knicks, a pretty solid defensive team, they made us really think and figure things out on the fly. I thought James did a great job of orchestrating where the guys should be. The impact of Harden. Having Harden in the lineup makes a world of difference for Embiid. When former Sixer Ben Simmons was running the offense, Embiid was often tasked with doing the heavy lifting scoring-wise. Now the workload is distributed more evenly, and Harden is making life easier for others around him too. Tyrese Maxey finished Sunday's game with 21 points, and that's because Harden does a tremendous job of opening up the floor for his teammates. Maxey and fellow starters Matisse Thybulle and Tobias Harris are also getting better looks because so much focus is defending on Harden and Embiid. At the time of this video, they're 38-23, second in the Eastern Conference behind the Miami Heat. And should their hot streak continue, they could go and get first place like they did last year in the playoffs. All in all, Harden is doing exactly what the 76ers hoped he would do. Help them dominate while also benefiting what Embiid does with his own skills. What's more, the move also alleviates a certain burden he had in terms of whom he has to play with. Kyrie Irving. James Harden and Kyrie Irving were reportedly at odds with the Brooklyn Nets, and that may have played at least some role in Harden's trade demand. One issue in particular was a problem for Harden, at least according to a new report. Harden had concerns about Irving's vaccine status, partly because of certain restrictions Irving would face as a result. Harden was concerned about possibly facing the Toronto Raptors in a play-in game, according to Ian Begley of SNY. Irving would not be allowed to make the trip to Toronto under current guidelines in Canada. If the season ended today, the Nets would have had to make the trip to Toronto to play in the play-in game. Obviously, the Nets have time to avert that scenario down the stretch. Previous reports indicated that Harden and Irving did not really see eye to eye with the Nets, which helped lead to the blockbuster trade that sent Harden to Philadelphia. Harden wants a championship and was frustrated that Irving would not take the steps necessary to ensure his availability for a postseason run. That will no longer be an issue with the 76ers. And even though the 76ers got rid of some of their best supporting players, they are all eager to win the title, just like Harden. As such, he won't have to worry about being the only one pushing hard to win the title like what was happening in the Nets. Also, he has a future Hall of Fame coach in Doc Rivers who has won a title in the past, so he knows how to get things done so long as the team do their part. Are we jumping to conclusions? That is honestly a good question. And there are some people who think that this honeymoon period is going to come to an end soon enough. We do have to note that James Harden has had a bunch of themes over the course of the last 2 seasons that should make some people nervous. For example, when he got to the Nets, Harden was a revelation. He was going all out for them and even took less shots in order to be more of a facilitator for Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant. So, we know that he can be a team player so long as the team is doing good. And yes, the team right now is doing good. But what comes next might be the question. Especially if something happens in the playoffs, which, as we all know, Harden isn't the best in the playoffs. The playoffs. Here's the thing. You can't just be a good player in the regular season in major sports leagues. That's only half the battle. If you go into a slump when the playoffs are on, you're going to be a burden more than anything else. And sadly, Harden has been a burden in the playoffs at multiple points in his career. For example, when he was with the Oklahoma City Thunder alongside Durant and Russell Westbrook, they went to the NBA Finals against the Miami Heat, led by LeBron James and Dwayne Wade. And while they won the first game, they withered afterward and Harden was a non-factor for much of it. Then, when he went to the Houston Rockets, he was more known to just put up shots in order to boost his stats versus actually getting his team involved in order to win games. Including one playoff run when he was putting up so many shots per game that he was literally draining himself of energy over time and was exhausted every game by the time the run was over. And it wasn't that long of a run. Arguably, his most infamous run was when Chris Paul was his teammate and they were up 3-2 against the Golden State Warriors. And then Chris Paul got injured, and Harden couldn't get the team to win just one game to put them in the finals. So while the 76ers are indeed happy to have Harden with them right now, his longevity and his motivation to keep going is what will determine what happens in the playoffs and beyond. Fair projections. So, given all of this, what do you think the fairest projections for the 76ers are in the playoffs? It's a bit hard to predict because there are more factors here than just the 76ers. As we noted, the Eastern Conference is pretty stacked right now, and it's going to be interesting to see who comes out on top. The Miami Heat, for example, are going to be getting a lot of their injured players back soon enough. That goes the same for the Chicago Bulls, who are missing 2 of their key pieces. The Celtics and the Bucks are in the running as well, so what might determine the 76ers' fate is who they go up against in the playoffs, and not just who plays well. So, while they may seem unstoppable here, that is just for one period of time. It remains to be seen just how unstoppable they really are. So, what do you think? What do you think of this look at the Philadelphia 76ers and how the James Harden trade might just make them the title favorites? Do you agree that they are almost unstoppable with Harden playing like he is right now? Or do you feel that all it takes is the right team to go up against them for them to fold? Let us know in the comments below, and we'll see you next time on the channel.